Hi, Dayana.
Hi, Jeddah. So good to be here with you again.
Likewise.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you.
So, today I thought we could talk about something that is probably as universal as anything else in the human experience, which is the challenges we face as we are alive in this beautiful planet, building lives. We for sure are going to face challenges.
Mm.
And it's been really helpful for me as I have been in your around you to understand the mechanics of things
Hmm.
so I can approach challenges or life with a deeper understanding. So, if you don't mind, if we could speak about what are challenges present in our human experience? What are they here to do for us?
Mm. Challenges, whether we call them challenges, issues, problems, I don't like the word problems so much. Challenges is probably the best word. Um, the only reason that we feel them as a kind of limitation or sometimes a burden is because they're reflecting back to us a gap in our knowingness, a gap in our understanding, a gap in our relationship with our being. And the reason why they can be sometimes confusing and perplexing and frustrating and uncomfortable is because we don't understand how they got there. They just feel like, because we're experiencing them, they feel like they're woven into who we are. And that's the most common mistake that people make, is that when they experience that, because that challenge is taking place within the same context as their beingness,
Mm,
their own being, then the beingness and the perception of challenge or limitation get overlaid one on top of the other. And then comes the automatic assumption. We don't even realize we're doing this because it happens so quickly, that as the mind attends to this, it doesn't see the underlying mechanics of energy, gathering in a pattern. The mind interacts with this part and sees only the discomfort, the experience of that. And so the mind makes this assumption that there is something wrong with us. Or if we apply a narrative of blame to why we're experiencing that, then we might want to point the finger outward at somebody or some circumstance, some event, some reason why that's happening. So yeah, we generally cannot and don't make friends with the discomfort of challenge. And the reason we don't do that is because we don't understand the mechanics. Once you understand the mechanics of challenge, just like understanding the mechanics of energy or your being or existence, it becomes a massive aha moment. And you're like, oh. And then everything slots into place. Everything makes sense. You're like,
mm,
oh, I see what is happening now. I see how my thought forms have ordered the energy of my being into that pattern. And because I've brought my conscious attention to there, that I'm experiencing that. And I've mistaken that experience as an integral part of who I am. So there's layers to it. But when we interact just with the surface, we tend to arrive at erroneous assumptions. And then those erroneous assumptions lead us to make erroneous conclusions. And then because we're the ones doing all of the noticing and the feeling and the assessing, We've got nobody else within our being saying, "Excuse me, are you sure that's correct?" So that's the whole point of an assumption. We say, "I've thought it, therefore it's correct." There it goes straight into the subconscious and it gets locked into place as a belief, as a pattern. So there's this whole mechanism happening, this whole cyclical mechanism happening. Um, and as we know, we don't just have one challenge, we have many. And they all sort of join hands and form a circle and dance around us. Um, it sort of reminds me of that saying that misery likes company. And
Hmm.
uh, and so they become interwoven. There's broad themes
Yeah.
to our challenges, and then we cluster all similar experiences under those broad themes so that any event which is similar to any one of those themes in that cluster is going to awaken the whole cluster, going to bring it back up for review. And we experience it very much at the same as when it was laid down.
Hmm.
So anyone who's ever experienced being triggered, which is pretty much the whole human race, knows that we can be suddenly catapulted back into an earlier consciousness, an earlier mindset, and earlier feelings, maybe feelings that we had when we were a small child. And there they are again in the present moment in our 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever. So that's really that's really the story of the human race, is
Yes.
that we and people say, it's the human condition. It is the human condition, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the human condition. It is part of the design that if we misunderstand our being, we will accidentally, inadvertently manifest that misunderstanding
Mm.
as some form of contractive pattern, which we're then duty bound to experience. But we're designed in such a way as if we don't call that energy into those patterns, we don't experience that discomfort. Where we have the mechanism, we have the design to experience an unbroken state of well-being, bliss, contentment, joy, love. It's just we don't use our being in that way. So, but, the universe existence is the ultimate recycler. So it doesn't waste any of those experiences. It's not like, oh, you misunderstand your being, you misunderstand the design of existence, therefore you're going to suffer. It's not punitive, it's educational. So the kind of challenges we experience, the kind of discomfort we feel is the exact facsimile of the thought which placed it there. And if we can notice that discomfort, if we can notice the steps that we follow to create challenges, we can follow them backwards to dissolve them.
Hmm.
And so it really is um, a process of learning those steps and being able to attend to them consciously.
Yeah. So if challenges arise when there are gaps in our misunderstanding, and you're right, it's interesting because it's cyclical. It seems to be similar challenges that repeat over and over, either with different people or different circumstances, but they're always similar. Um, the tendency certainly might be to blame others or the situation and not
Mhm.
so much look at ourselves.
Well, sometimes
So,
we also are hard on ourselves, though. So some people are wired to blame themselves always. Some people are
mm,
wired to blame others. So yeah,
okay.
there's
There's
can go
both
both ways.
flavors.
Yeah.
Okay. Good clarification. So, what would you say, Jeddah? So, if the beginning of it is understanding that there's a gap in our understanding of life,
Mhm.
what would you say is that first step when the discomfort arises and we either notice that we're either blaming ourselves or blaming others for what we're experiencing? What is the first step to allow the mechanics of that process to unfold in a way that is rooted in understanding?
Mm. We can do it just through a purely experiential route, but or route, as the Americans say, but it is longer. It is longer.
Okay.
What I like to do is explain the mechanics to give some kind of orientation conceptually, theoretically first, to explain
Hmm.
how it works. Then, when you're inside the experience of it, you can remember, oh, this is an ABCDE process. And you can start to identify the stages of the process within your own experience. If you just stop, there are many techniques, to allow us to take a breath, to pause, to count to 10, all of these things. If we do that, it does lower the blood pressure and it allows us to bring some kind of consciousness into the present moment so that we can make a more conscious choice in that next moment as to how we respond rather than react. But without the understanding of the design and how the mechanics work, it people can still get very lost if they
Mm.
just enter into the experience because if they take a breath, they arrive on the scene and they know, okay, I feel a lot of energy, I feel a lot of contraction, I might feel anger, my mind is whirring. The mind is always panicked
Yeah.
when we're experiencing a challenge, and particularly when we're triggered. And even has a name, it's called cortical inhibition. Uh, so in those moments, we might be able to be conscious that all of that is happening to us, but we may not understand how best to work with that in the next moment to remedy it or to resolve it.
Hmm.
So if we just calm ourselves down when we experience challenge and just like somebody says, go for a walk, have a cup of tea, go and do something else and distract yourself. It doesn't actually lift those patterns out of our mind or our energy field. It just means that the immediate threat has gone away, things settle down, and the pattern goes subterranean again.
Mm.
If we really want to engage with our challenges in a way that lifts them out, we have to see them. We have to understand the design and the mechanics. That's a prerequisite. But we have to see those moments as a brilliant opportunity to engage with that particular challenge because you can go looking for your belief systems in your subconscious when you're not in a triggered state. But when those patterns are up and they're active, all the information pertaining to them, such as the thought processes, the belief systems, the assumptions, the conclusions, the memories associated with it, the expectations, the perception, all of those elements of the experience are literally on the table at that moment. So it's perfect. You can see it all laid out, you can feel it. That is the perfect opportunity to work with him. And that is the last thing we feel like doing when we are triggered. Because our whole being is literally a flame with contracted, strong, fiery sensation,
Mm.
or the opposite might be sinking, galling, shock and horror kind of sensations, which have that dropping feeling where everything's pulling in rather than anger where everything's bubbling on out. That is the last thing we feel like doing when we feel like that. We want to get away. And we tell ourselves that if we can just distract, if we can offload some energy in that moment, we'll feel better. But what happens in those moments when we try to just distract ourselves is that without realizing it, we further entrench the belief system that put it there because we're
Mm.
engaging with it as a problem. That's why I don't like the word issue or problem so much, especially not problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's saying if you think you've got a problem, then you have, sort of thing,
Yeah.
or argue for your problems, and sure enough, they're yours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that mindset alone takes all of that fertile material that has come up, it pushes it back under, back into the subconscious because we're saying, no, this is a problem and I'm overwhelmed in this moment. I can't handle it. Therefore, what we want to do is immediately tuck it away as quickly as possible through distraction, through, that's why when people are upset, they eat or drink or smoke a cigarette or watch the telly or go on social media to try to ameliorate those sensations.
To numb.
To
Yeah.
numb, yeah. So if the energy that is has arisen in you is of the fiery kind, then we tend to want to get rid of the excess energy by blaming someone. So that's why we shout. Our eyes blaze, we shout. That's why we can sometimes be physical or violent because we're
Mm.
literally trying to get rid of all of that excess energy. We're trying to expel the discomfort we feel by placing it into our environment.
Mm-hmm.
If the discomfort is the kind of sinking, dropping, withdrawing kind, then we tend to look for situations where we can acquire, we want somebody's comfort, we want somebody's love, we want to give something to ourselves in order to fill ourselves back up. So depending on the nature of the challenge, and there's many other types, there's many varieties,
Mm-hmm.
but those are the two common ones and how we respond. So yeah, I mean, there's certain things we can do. There are certain somatic techniques that we can employ, and tapping and breathing and all of that, which they all work and they're all helpful. But you have to be willing to engage with challenges with your consciousness locked onto them, seeing them as they are, and being able to see them not just on that surface level of the discomfort or the belief system, but being able to penetrate with your consciousness through all the multiple layers of perception and experience and sensation and assumption, conclusion, and memory. You have to be able to penetrate through all of those layers to access the final energetic layer, which is the energy of your being, the energy of existence. It's the same energy that is there, that has temporarily been pulled into that particular pattern, that particular state.
Mm.
Um, and and that the initial author of that is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And once we see that, we see there's no aggressor, there's no threat. But if we say to people, oh, you're just doing it to yourself, that could encourage a lack of compassion.
Mm.
We have to be very kind to ourselves. We have to be very gentle because there's a lot of shame bound up in feeling that we've created all of our own issues. And if we are the type of person that's wired to blame ourselves, that
Mm.
can compound things.
Mm,
So this is why I feel that to really lay out the design of existence, how energy works, how it's what is its structure, what is its nature, what is its function, and these are how the mechanics work. This is how thought works. This is how sensation works. This is how consciousness works. This is how the present moment works. You know, all the stuff that we've put in our foundation program. If you
mm.
don't understand how those component parts work, you just swept up in the experience. And then it's a little bit like being dropped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a stormy day and said, oh, just swim to shore. Yeah, I'm trying, but I'm not getting anywhere. Whereas if you've been trained to swim in those conditions, you might make some headway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I I have to say I am myself doing all of the foundation courses that we have in the Oasis right now, and you've done such a beautiful job of explaining very complex things in pretty short classes. Everything's less than 10 minutes. And even though I've heard a lot of this before from you, um, it's landing in me perhaps because of how beautiful the videos are in a way that made me think, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this since I was so little. So I have been inviting my kids to sit with me, and we've been doing the classes together because, as you said, when we understand the mechanics, we can lend self-compassion a lot more easily and also have the willingness to sit with it and understand it
Mm,
without being so hard on ourselves or others. And what I hear you saying is that challenges offer us the opportunities to look at the underlying energy and mechanics and patterns that are alive in us that may be triggered by something that happens in the environment. Therefore, a challenge is the perfect opportunity to free ourselves from it in a way that understanding that is a process, but that if we don't do that, it's kind of collecting evidence to continue making the beliefs even more powerful in us. Therefore, the challenge may be returning over and over again, giving us that opportunity to look at it. So, um, yes, I have to say that it's so empowering. That
mm,
reminder, the foundation course in the Oasis offer us of the agency that we do have when we understand is very empowering
mhm,
to learn and to be reminded that that is how things are actually working.
mhm,
So,
mm.
with that, I want to ask you, could we talk a little bit about what are those common challenges that you observe from all the people that you've worked with over the years that as humans we seem to struggle with, either in the path of um, self-development or just in, the regular life of a human? What do you observe are those trends or those
Mm.
commonalities when it comes to challenges?
Well, it depends on one's stage of development.
Hmm.
So our challenges change depending on our stage of development. So they start off pretty raw and rough, and they become more refined and more subtle as we develop. So in the early days of consciousness seeking to get a foothold in our humanness, uh, fear is
Mm,
almost universal there. And, people can experience fear at later stages too. So it's one of the, most primal emotions that we can feel as human beings. And it's so visceral too. It's not subtle, it's not nuanced. It's right there, and your whole body can feel it. Um, so, but fear is really the sort of the ultimate misunderstanding,
Mm,
because fear arises when we feel some kind of internal or external threat. But it also arises if we feel somebody has suggested that we've done something wrong or they don't like us. So fear can arise as fear of rejection, fear of not being loved. So it's not just about sort of physical or emotional safety. It can also, fear can really do a number on the mind as well and on the heart. So fear is a concern about the presence of something, whereas doubt tends to be more a concern about the absence of something. So those two, the fear and doubt, are very, very um, common uh, behavioral patterns that human beings experience, particularly in early stages of development. And they just shift their context, so it could be that it manifests more in your relationships or at work or something to do with health, something to do with money, something to do with family dynamics, something to do with uh, your environment, such as your community, your government. Um, so the context changes, but those challenges are pretty foundational. As we move along a bit, insecurity is another really, really common challenge.
mhm.
Um, and it affects both men and women, but it's in slightly different ways. It manifests in slightly different ways and is expressed in different ways. So insecurity is a big issue. Um, and then because the pendulum has swung in that direction, as we develop, it tends to swing in the other direction. So whatever we put in place to compensate for these challenges that we feel and we haven't properly addressed, we tend to overcompensate. So the mind can sometimes create a false sense of security by way of our ego development, arrogance and a sense of overconfidence and
Yeah.
entitlement. And it's not so common, particularly with the people that I work with.
Hmm.
But fear, doubt, and insecurity are very, very common. Um, Another one is that human beings, because they have grown up and grown into and established this identity, which is sort of the accepted version of self, whether they like it or not. The sort of the accepted version of self becomes the identity that we agree to inside and promote outwardly. Because that becomes our anchor, anything which we feel threatens or compromises or calls into question our identity, that can be extremely challenging, particularly when we're in the early stages of our development. We've seen people who will get into a physical fight because they don't like the way someone was looking at them or something somebody said, you know. Um, the amount of lawsuits because someone said something that offended us, or whether it was or wasn't true, this kind of thing. These are all because we've felt some kind of affront to the identity that we've um, chosen and not consciously, but we've developed, adopted, and we will in some cases fight to the death to maintain it. So
Mm-hmm.
these are some of the challenges that, and then of course there's all the micro challenges that people feel on a constant basis, like the struggle with our physical bodies, the struggle of our relationship with food, a struggle to be in harmonious relationship with one another. I mean, all of our challenges have a common root. It comes back to that misunderstanding. If we understood our design, if we lived in alignment with our design, none of those misperceptions would arise. Therefore, we wouldn't experience it. Therefore, there would be no issue of threat or
Mm-hmm.
malice or wrongdoing. There would be no conception of lack or something missing. So when we look out on the planet Earth, we just see almost every single human being. There are exceptions, but they're rare and they're few. But almost every single human being is engaged in this, what, you know, the Vedas would call the illusion, the Buddhists would call samsara, the dance or the maya, the dance of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we'll spend many, many lifetimes doing that. It takes up a huge amount of our bandwidth, our energy, our focus. Um, and you could say, well, it all seems rather unnecessary. It can't be unnecessary because then it wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, clearly we're here for a reason. We're at this point for a reason. Consciousness is not a case of just flicking on a switch, saying, now I'm conscious, all my problems have gone away. Wisdom is hard won. You have to experience it. You have to walk the path. You have to refute all of those illusory beliefs one by one. You have to live the changes that you wish to see. So these challenges, as they come in, they act like a sort of proving agent that helps us. It gets our attention, and then we attend to it. And whether we do that effectively or wisely or not, eventually we'll get some kind of new understanding or perspective out of that experience that we can take forward. Something along the lines of, I just do not want to do that again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, so you see it when people have had a series of um, unsatisfactory relationships, and they get
Yeah.
to a point where they say never again, and they're done with that particular pattern, that way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking, and hopefully they can move on. So we do learn, but we're slow and we're ponderous and we're a little bit ineffective. So it's not that when you, well, it is and it isn't. I'm going to spin it both ways. It is the case that you introduce the understanding of how life works. A lot of that stuff just doesn't arise in the first place. So it's like you skim the cream off the top. It's all the low-hanging fruit. It's just you get a lot of early wins, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, okay. And then what's left, you still have to live through it. Yes, you're bringing a new perspective. Yes, you're bringing a new understanding. Yes, you're much more effective. You have much more agency, as you said. Um, and the whole process of recalibrating is much more pleasant when you're doing it from a place of knowledge and experience, and easier. But the curriculum of life is extremely comprehensive and extremely thorough. And we don't get graded and given past papers just because we managed one episode of Fear or Anger or like no, 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 no. So
Yes.
that's why um that's why I'm always, trying to say to people, yes, this work can do miraculous things, but we have to work for it rather than just ask it to work for us. Like we have to be the ones that change. We just think, oh, if I just learn this technique, there's going to be some miraculous change. Yes, but we have to like allow our being to be the thing that changes. It's like I love that story about Einstein giving out papers to his class when he was at Princeton. And they said, Sir, you've already given us this paper. And he said, Yes, I know, but the answers have changed. Right? So
Yes.
existence doesn't change, the design doesn't change, the common issues don't change, but we do. And the purpose of challenges is to not grind us down, as a little depressing, but to knead us, make us pliable and make us willing to try something new because most of us are adamant we've got it right first time and it's something else or someone else is at fault and we're sticking to our version of events. So
Yes.
yeah, the challenges also make us humble.
Oh, for sure. Yes, you think you have it down, and then
Hmm.
you see that one person, or you're faced with that one situation, you're like, oh, maybe not. Maybe not so much. I have to continue to in that you're pointing out right now is I see it in myself. I see it everywhere. We have gotten so good at saying some of these things, right? At
Mm,
repeating some of the things that we've learned. But are we embodying them? Are we truly living them? And
mm,
that is where it gets very real,
mm,
right?
mm,
It's
mm,
like I
mm.
can say and I can know these things
Yeah,
mentally,
yeah,
conceptually,
yeah,
but can I live them?
yeah, yeah, because otherwise we just end up talking like bumper stickers. Um,
Yes, which is
and there's
kind of
a
happening.
Yeah, it's
But
happening. There's a lot of that language around.
yes.
Um, and some of it is even passive aggressive, you
Oh,
know,
very much so.
oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry that you felt that way.
Or the word boundaries has become like, I need a boundary here.
Right. Yeah.
Do we even understand that a lot of it is with ourselves?
Mm, mm, mm.
But
Bless.
most of it is with, right? So it's yeah, we're getting really good at saying all these things, but
Mm,
I think challenges are a way in which we can be humble with life and
mm,
really see
mm,
whether we're
mm.
truly internalizing what we are starting to say, but
Yeah,
is it a part of our internal life?
yeah. And coming back to the curriculum of life, the curriculum of life is governed by natural intelligence. And you can't game natural intelligence. You can't cheat on the curriculum of life. There is a precise record of every thought, belief, assumption, conclusion, memory in your energy field. And so you can sort of be up here, sort of denying the
Yeah.
presence of all of that and saying, no, I'm just this nice person. Um,
Hmm.
But if you've got that material in your field, if you've once thought it, whether it was this lifetime or previous lifetime, you've adopted it from somewhere else, it doesn't matter. If you've taken it into your field and made it yours, it stays with you until you revisit it and revise it. So there is, no matter the kind of nice new age language that we put on all of this stuff, um, our we have our own living curriculum within our energy field that we have to attend to, and we can put it off, or we can just roll up our sleeves and accept the fact that none of us are yet perfect and that we have things that we need to attend to.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I'm very curious about the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur. But before I get there, Jetta, could we live a lifetime? Because you just said putting off the curriculum. Could we, how is that conversation between life and the intelligence, the natural intelligence, and the curriculum that I agreed with myself I was going to live in this lifetime? What happens if I keep putting it off? What happens there? Can I not accomplish what I meant to accomplish in a given lifetime? Does that
Yeah,
happen?
yeah, it can do. Because we are that intelligence and our soul is connected into our universal intelligence, that we are getting those inner prompts.
Yeah,
So also, the more we put something off, the more we avoid something, the bigger it becomes, because, that phrase, what you resist persists. And so anything which you have deemed um, overwhelming or unmanageable, or that you've repressed or suppressed it, it's got nowhere else to go but your own field.
yeah,
And so you're going to be storing that within your own basement and taking it with you everywhere you go. So you're never really free of it. Um, and that has ways of connecting into, we will, through the magnetic draw of that material in our field, we will magnetize ourselves to certain situations or people that are going to be able to puncture our resistance, get down and make it come to the surface.
yeah,
So, yes, we can put things off to a certain extent, but the design of life has got that covered too. Um, and it depends how ambitious um, our plan for any one lifetime is as well. Some
mm-hmm,
people have designed a fairly cruisy journey,
yeah.
with not too not too demanding a schedule. Other people, like myself, have, have just said, "Yeah, bring it on, bring it on. Yeah, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take
Yes
that."
to everything.
Yes to everything, and yeah, let's pack it in. Let's get this done. Um, So, there are pros and cons to both approaches, but most people are somewhere in the middle. That they've got a certain amount that they wanted to accomplish and experience and revisit and understand, and they generally uh, want to leave their life feeling that they've met those checkpoints.
Hmm.
But it is also true that many souls end up back home, and then during their life review, they're like, oh, darn. It's a little bit like when you go to the store, you spend 20 minutes going around the store, you've bought a bunch of stuff, you paid for it, you get back home, and then you realize you've forgotten the bananas that you went to the store for. And you're
Yes.
like, oh, um, and I've got to go back to the store now. So you got to go back to Earth now and just
Yes.
buy bananas the whole lifetime. Focus on bananas. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, it, there's a lot of variety, there's a lot of diversity. There's no two lives the same, but there are broad themes.
Yes. So for someone like you that understands the design of life so deeply, and you're still here with us, living a human life, building a business, um, building a beautiful life. Would you be willing to share about some of those challenges that you faced and how have you worked with them, even with the understanding of how it works, how natural intelligence still here working with you?
Mm. Well, we said earlier that, life teaches you, and sometimes you learn the hard way. So I feel that in some respects I've learned the hard way. Um, and so my my wisdom is now has come from lived experience.
Mm,
So on the one hand, it's come from lived experience. I um, I did not find it easy being a human being in a physical body. That was always a bit of a mismatch for me. And I know many people feel that. I know I'm not alone or unique in that way. Um, and so it took me many years to get to grips with the human aspect. And I'm a little bit back to front in that way, I think, to most people. Most people, they start off, sort of mastering the body, then the emotions, then the mind, then the heart, and then their soul and spirit. And I came in the opposite, that I had this sort of almost effortless, easy, automatic mastery of soul and spirit, and trying to trying to work with the physical body um, was really challenging for me. There were so many things that I didn't understand. It wasn't an automatic uh, marriage of harmony, putting those two things together. So it's, I'm 59 this year, and um, I'd say that that is still in process.
mm.
How I met it the same way everyone else did. I often say to my students, you think I just dropped in on a cloud and that everything's easy for me. No, no, like I've experienced every single thing that you've experienced.
Mhm.
Um, I guess I'm fortunate in so much as because my knowledge and awareness of my beingness has always been so immediate and so strong that when I've had challenging experiences, and I've had many, all the same, emotions and stuff that everyone's ever had, I haven't been spared anything, and nor should I be. Uh, I was able to be present with it in such a way as I knew it was happening. And so over the years, I've learned that that presence is the softening, is the grace in those moments, and that strong sensation, challenging emotions, mental aberrations, they can be there, but I don't become them. They don't override me, and they don't determine who I know myself to be. So I think that's the difference.
Mm. Identity.
Yeah, I don't identify with them. Yeah. And so that practice has been, I started this work when I was in my very early 20s. So, 40, almost 40 years now. So it's been, that has been my practice, to the point now where, um, I don't know if I experience challenges in the same way as other people experience them because the, the, there's always that light of awareness there.
Yeah.
Um, But if I stub my toe, it hurts like anyone else's. And, when I see people dropping litter on our beautiful Mother Earth, I can have a moment
Mm,
of like, oh, dear God, and then just like, love, 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 love. So, yeah, yeah,
mhm, mhm.
yeah. And in terms of the business, um, that has been more of an area of like a learning curve, a big learning curve for me. And I think it's because um, I didn't have any prior experience, not in this lifetime, and I don't remember. Um, I don't know about previous lifetimes, whether I was some merchant or
Mm.
was I just don't sense that I was ever involved in commerce somehow. It feels like a new area of discovery. So there's been plenty times in this life where I felt overwhelmed by the breadth and depth and complexity of building a business, running a business, the responsibility, the relentlessness of it, the unending nature of things always coming at you, that you
Mm.
never get to a point where, oh, like that I've built the boat and I know how to sail, so off we go and it's all going to be smooth sailing. There's and anyone who's like an entrepreneur or who's, really experienced in business just looks at you like, duh, you know.
Obvious.
But I think, yeah, exactly. But I think I'm having a lot of those experiences for the first time.
Mhm,
And so I've got nothing else to compare it to. Um,
mhm.
but then, I've thought, well, if it is that my personal path has come to a gentler, um, easier place, then being the soul that had, signed up for the full curriculum,
Mhm.
hey ho, why don't I just start a business and start? It's like snakes and ladders, you think you got to the top and then no, you're going straight back to square number two. Um, so so yeah, that has been a series of challenges, but the upside is that you learn a lot. You learn a
Yeah.
lot about yourself, you learn a lot about others. And I think, well, we're here to learn, so that may as well be the curriculum, like
Mhm,
building a
mhm.
business. Yeah.
Yes.
Managing finances, all of that stuff, it's all it feels like a steep learning curve.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
And I have to say that just being a part of for a few years now of the team, the Intelligent Life team, one of the most beautiful things that this company is doing is that we're not just trying to do business as usual, as
Mm,
companies
mm,
do
mm,
business,
mm, mm, mm.
is the full integration of the living an intelligent life and natural intelligence
Yeah,
as we build a business as well, which is
yeah.
sometimes the threshold that seems to be two separate things, like the sacred versus business. And
Yes,
they're
yes, yes.
not, right? And so
One
marrying
must
those
come
two
together. Mm,
ideas,
mm, mm, mm,
yes, is where there's certainly resistance, but that seems to be part of the work of discovery, right? Of how do we create a conscious business that
yeah,
also thrives by honoring the principles of life.
yeah, yeah. And honoring the principles of beingness in each person in the team and where they're at and their unique constellation of thoughts and feelings and behaviors and level of development and skills, abilities, histories. Um, yeah, it's true. It would have been easier, and I think I would have been a lot more comfortable if we had put our organization was non-profit or um, just completely service based.
Hmm.
And um, in some ways, I've questioned that kind of fork in the road where that decision was made to be part of a for-profit entity. Um, and because it has seemed at times in the past at odds with the deep, deep, deep reverence and that I feel for life and this work and the deep place that this work comes from, its purity, its beauty, its love for the world. And to marry that all up or even sort of put it inside a commercial vehicle. What does that commercial vehicle look like to be able to hold that and but also go out into the world? For many years, decades, in fact, I've eschewed all marketing because I just couldn't find the right language or way of saying, hey guys, we're doing this
Hmm.
without it seeming, when I look at a lot of marketing in the world, it seems very shouty to me,
Yeah.
uh, or very obvious, or um, and and yet it it seems to be successful for those companies. Marketing budgets are huge, right, for all companies. So
Yes.
something's working there, but I was just concerned that I never wanted our marketing to be falsely elevating somebody's fears to then move in and say, oh, we'll solve that for you. I think a lot of marketing, particularly in this industry,
Yeah.
does sort of fans the flames of discontent in order to move in and satisfy that discontent. And I find that unacceptable for me.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, Intelligent Life has trodden very carefully and gently into that arena. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to think if we've done anything that we do well in how we treat people, how we value people. Not perfect, it's a learning curve. And how we present ourselves to the world. Um, but I think the jewel in our crown is how genuine we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And even that's been marketed to death, um,
Yes.
with first greenwashing, then purpose washing, and then authentic washing, and then,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
yeah, how to communicate all of that, stay true to oneself, and um, and allow the organization to grow and thrive.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And how to understand that at the end of the day, when it comes from that place of purity, everything is sacred.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
body,
Mm-mm.
our what we build in the world,
Yeah.
everything is sacred.
Yeah.
So
And I truly believe that, that yeah, it's a really good point you make that um we tend to designate, oh, this thing is a sacred thing, like you said, that they're very far apart. This is a sacred thing, this is a spiritual. That's why I don't like the term spiritual, because every if in
Everything
its truest
is.
sense, everything is spiritual, as in everything is sacred. It reminds me of saying that everything is sacred, reminds me of that Monty Python song in the meaning of life. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I won't start singing it now. It's got very, it's, this is not the place to start bringing in those lyrics.
Um, yes, I think this is a whole topic in itself. But
Mm,
Jetta, I wanted to end our conversation today with is there something that you can share with us about there's so many challenges and conflicts in the world right now,
mm,
as we in the planet, from a place of understanding those collective challenges that we observe versus what we live in our personal lives. Could you leave us with some wisdom or guidance on how to navigate those things that seem so big and yet they touch all of us, as we're navigating
mm,
whatever perspective or point of view we have on the challenges in the world that we observe? How do we navigate that with an open heart and also with our feet planted on the ground?
mm. Well, the first thing to say is that, misunderstanding scales. So the effects that we see in the world around us are just the scaled iteration of all of the individual misunderstandings, all the individual inputs. So that's just the law of existence. That's just part of the design. So if we don't like what we see around us, um, we've really got to look at our own being. Our own being is the only place we can take care of that. And most people say, though, but I'm a nice person. I do this and do that. And I would never go, bomb another country or treat my citizens that way. Um, but maybe it wouldn't manifest the same way, but we might have seeds of that same misunderstanding within our own being. So to attend to ourselves. The other thing to say is, and it's easy to say and hard to do, is that we talked earlier about challenges and how we tend to interact. We see only the surface and
Mm,
we believe only the surface. And because we're physical beings and we're oriented to our five senses, um, that information is far more convincing to us than our own sixth sense. Um, and so when we look out in the world, we see the surface impression of looks like, the world has gone to hell in a handbasket. And we see the death, destruction, degradation, disease. Um, and just like with our own challenges, we make certain assumptions and conclusions, and we store that as belief. But beneath the surface of the world's issues, there is that same energy that makes us, makes everything. And it's there, accessible, available in its original form. And we can access that within our own being. So we talked earlier about how consciousness can penetrate through all the layers of misunderstanding, all the elements and factors, and get right down to the eternal truth underneath. And we can do the same with the world. So we can look through the appearance of things.
mm,
And that's not to minimize the human suffering and anguish. It's not to give a free pass to those people who have a wanton disregard for human life or human suffering. Not at all. It's just to remind ourselves that life is, in fact, beautiful. The fact we're not living it that way is not the fault of life. Um, and to take heart from the fact that intelligence, beauty, good, is everywhere, is everywhere, and is underlying everything, no matter how it looks, no
Mm.
matter how it looks. So don't give up, don't give up hope, but also don't give up on one's own being, don't give up on humanity. Um, we're at a major inflection point in our evolution right now. And in the same way that our personal challenges kind of need us and grind us down a bit, um, so too the world's challenges are doing the same for the collective mindset, the collective understanding.
Mm.
So yes, it's a bit of a crucible of fire right now, but it is, these are the birth pangs of a new kind of understanding coming through. It's just, um, it seems to be painful to watch it in slow motion.
Yes, that was so helpful. That made me land it in my heart.
Mm,
Thank
mm,
you for that, Jetta.
mm.
All right, is there anything else you would like to leave us humans with today?
Just to say, don't forget to smile. When we are
Mm.
going through a challenge, our faces, they register. Um, they register that so uh, transparently. And when you walk along the street or you sit on public transport and you look at, there's a lot of um, sadness and suffering and when we smile, just like the sunshine comes out. The sunshine comes out on the outside and the inside. It's yeah,
Mm.
yeah, just yeah. And be kind to yourself. Smile and be kind to yourself.
Mm. It's a softening when we
Mm,
smile.
mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm.
All right, so I think that's we're gonna close for today. Thank you, Jetta, again.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice to talk with you and really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Me too.
Bye bye.
Bye.